Everyone has a different reason for loving Pokemon. For some, it's for the gameplay experience, for others, it's for shiny hunting, or perhaps it's because of the creature's aesthetics. But the real question here is, why do Pokemon love us? Well, the answer is simple, it is the friendship mechanic. Each Pokemon has a friendship value ranging from 0 to 255. 0 friendship, the Pokemon hates you, and 255, it loves you. In solo runs, this statistic is fairly niche. It makes its biggest impact by calculating the base power for return. I'm sure the comments are going to come up with a bunch of other ways that friendship impacts solo runs, but overall, it's just not that useful of a stat. So you might be asking, why, Scott, would you spend the entire introduction of the video talking about it? Well, that leads us to today's solo run, which is going to be a Pokemon Platinum playthrough using only Heatran. Back in January, my furnace broke. Luckily in Canada, it wasn't super cold at the time, so my wife and I didn't have heat for one night, and I figured after that experience that I should play the game with a Pokemon that resembles a furnace. Plus, I wanted to start off the 2024 Platinum season with another legendary Pokemon. When I was doing my preliminary research for this video, I discovered a fact that is very curious. When you look at Heatran, I really don't think that this thing wants to be my friend. But believe me, it really does, because its base friendship stat is 100. Just for a little bit of context, other legendary Pokemon like Mewtwo, Lugia, Rayquaza, and Palkia all have a base friendship stat of 0. If you don't know what base friendship is, it's just the value that's assigned to the Pokemon when you first obtain them. So these legendary Pokemon really value their freedom, and they hate being caught by the trainer. Some other legendaries have slightly higher base friendships, like Zapdos and Suicune for example, which both start with base 35. This is half the value that the vast majority of Pokemon have when you obtain them, with some notable exceptions like Buneary. For some reason, this cute little rabbit starts with 0 friendship. I'm sure that is not going to be relevant in the near future. There are very few Pokemon that start with a higher base friendship than 70, but Heatran is one of those Pokemon, and I have to say that is a saving grace for the early game of this playthrough. For base stats, Heatran starts with 91 HP, 90 attack, 106 defense, 130 special attack, 106 special defense, and 77 speed. So it is a relatively slow defensive Pokemon with an outrageous special attack stat. There's some synergy here because its first move is Ancient Power, which deals special damage. Also, this move has a 10% chance to boost all of your stats by 1 stage. However, that's where the good news runs out for Heatran's early game. Ancient Power has only 5 PP, so I anticipate I'll have to use Struggle at least a little bit early on. This situation gets worse though, because at level 9 it learns Leer, which means I would have to spam out 30 power points of this move in order to be able to use Struggle again. Also, rock moves are not particularly good against Rourke, and I don't think that just 5 power points are going to cut it. So what are my other options? Well, at level 17, Heatran learns Fire Fang, which is nice because it gets the same type attack bonus, but also is a physical move, and Heatran's physical attack is not nearly as good as its special attack. Examining its moveset even further, it doesn't get a special attacking move through level up until 49 when it learns Lava Plume. I thought that things might be saved by the TM and HM learn set, but that isn't the case once again. All of the special attacks it gains access to come much later into the playthrough. For example, Flamethrower is only obtainable once I defeat Crasher Wake, Dragon Pulse and Dark Pulse are in Victory Road, and Flash Cannon is after Byron. Also, Heatran does have access to Earthquake fairly early into the run, but it learns Earth Power, which is the special ground type move, at level 73. As a legendary Pokemon, it has the slow growth rate, which is definitely one of the worst for a solo run. Because of its lack of special moves, I think the early and mid game are going to be a little bit slower than we might have expected. And so again, let's circle around to its high base friendship, because after I obtain the Pokedex, Professor Rowan also gives me the TM for Return. I can teach this to Heatran right away, and while it is a physical move, at least I have something that I can use in the case that Ancient Power runs out of PP. This is also going to give me damage against Rourke's Pokemon without having to deplete all of Lear's PP in order to use Struggle to defeat him. I was so worried that Heatran would have to train to level 17 to gain access to Fire Fang, and that would take so long. Okay, so now let's start talking about this run. On Route 201, I catch 2 of my HM users, in this case a Bidoof and a Starly. I pass through Jubilife City and then take on the rival for the second time. Ancient Power dispatches the Starly very quickly, and the Piplup doesn't know any water-type moves, so it isn't a threat. But speaking of threats, we need to talk about the Pokemon Machop, because there's one trainer on Route 203 that has one. And in the early game, it starts with the move Low Kick, which starting in Generation 3 deals damage based on the target's weight. And Heatran is very heavy. It weighs 948 pounds or 430 kilograms. As a result, Low Kick's base power will be 120. Also, Heatran is weak to fighting type moves, and as a result, the effective power of this move will be 240. I successfully dodged the trainer with Machop, but I am not finished with these fighting types yet. After defeating all of the other trainers for as much experience as is possible, I pass through Orberg Gate to the city. Heatran is only level 10, so I will need to do more training. And that is a problem. There are 2 adjacent locations. Number 1 is Orberg Mine, which I have to go into to get Rourke to return to the gym. The wild Pokemon that populate this area are really not going to be good to train against. There is a 25% chance to fight a Zubat, which is decent. There is a 65% chance to fight Geodude, and a 10% chance to fight Onix. It doesn't make a lot of sense to train here against these rock ground types when I'm using moves like Ancient Power and Return. I should also note that there are 2 trainers here, Worker Mason and Worker Colin. That said, while Mason only has a Geodude, Worker Colin has a level 8 Machop. I ended up fighting him, which I think wasn't advisable. Luckily the fighting type just uses Leer, and my Return is able to take it out on the second turn. After that, I head into the gym, fighting the 2 trainers here. They have rock ground types, and they give me a sense for how I'm going to do against Rourke. Ancient Power is doing a lot more than I was expecting, and inspired by these damage ranges, I decided to try the battle against the first gym leader. His first Pokemon is Geodude. I want to spam Ancient Power against it so that I can chance the Omni Boost. If I get one, I think I have a chance. If I don't, I'm probably going to lose. Unfortunately for me, after 3 hits, I finish his lead off without a stat increase. Well, Heatran does level up, which is nice, but not exactly what I needed. Onix is taking about a third from the Rock-type move. Luckily, it misses a Screech and then goes for Rock Throw, doing very little, but now I have to resort to using a combination of Leer and Return. By the time I knock out the Rock Snake, Heatran has orange health left over for the Cranidos. It's just not enough, so that's my first reset. I tried again with hopes that the Omni Boost would happen, and this time it does against the Geodude. Okay, that's perfect. I finish it off, move on to the Onix. Ancient Power is now doing half. That said, I run out of uses of this move, and Leer and Return can't knock the Snake out quick enough, so as a result I move on to the Cranidos with red health left over, and once again I have another loss. That was enough information for me to know that Heatran just needs to level up. If Orberg Mine isn't a good location, what are my other options? Well, I could go back to Orberg Gate. There's a 50% chance to face a level 5 to level 8 Zubat, a 35% chance for a level 5 to 7 Psyduck, and a 15% chance to run into Geodude. I wasn't thrilled with these prospects, so I went north of the city to Route 207. That said, I think this is a mistake. The encounter table here isn't much better. I have a 45% chance to run into a level 5 to 7 Machop. There's a 25% chance for a level 5 to 7 Ponyta, and a 30% chance to run into a level 5 to 7 Geodude. The reason I ended up training here is I just didn't know the encounter tables well enough. I should be training in Orberg Gate. As a result, I am going toe-to-toe with the fighting type regularly, and when one finally uses Low Kick, getting a critical hit, it takes Heatran down to 2 hit points. I am so lucky this wasn't a loss. So one consequence of training in this area is that I'll occasionally have heart palpitations. And another consequence is that I have to backtrack to the Pokemon Center frequently to heal. Well, let's get back to it. I need to do more training. And then this happened. Of all things, I ran into a shiny Machop. If you're wondering, this is the 3rd shiny I have encountered while my channel has been active. The first one was a Rattata in Pokemon Crystal, which I found before I had Pokeballs, so I was unable to catch it. The second one I found was a shiny Poochyena in Pokemon Emerald while training for Watson using Love Disc. Luckily for me, I was able to catch that one, and I eventually used it in a solo playthrough of Pokemon Emerald. By the way, that is going to be my policy going forward. Whenever I catch a shiny, I will make a solo run using it specifically. I was a little bit worried here because my Heatran is starting to get over leveled, and if I get a critical hit, I think I might knock the Machop out even using Ancient Power. As a result, I decided to just throw Pokeballs. I do want to note though, I only have 7 left over. Okay, please, I hope that I can catch it, and in this case, I do. I was watching the Lex Friedman podcast and seeing him talk about robots while playing this playthrough. He does martial arts, so I thought it was fitting that I found a shiny fighting type, and I decided to name it after him. In this case, it's a female Machop, so I name it Lexi. After this, I made sure to save, just so we don't lose our shiny Pokemon. I resumed my training, leveling Heatran up to level 14, and then I decided to face Rourke again. This time, I get very lucky. My first attack with Ancient Power triggers the Omni Boost, and so I'm able to knock the Geodude out in 2 turns. Next is Onix, and it is also a 2-hit, dealing only 3 damage with Rock Throw before it goes down. That means I still have 1 use of Ancient Power to use against the Cranidos. It does massive damage, his ace survives on red health, but it uses Leer, which is essentially doing nothing. Rourke uses a potion, and despite the fact that I now have to use Return, he just goes for Leer one more time, and with that, I have earned myself the first badge. I backtrack through Orberg Gate. Here I catch myself a Psyduck, which is my last HM user. By the way, I caught a Geodude in Orberg Mine. This is another reason that training here would have been superior, because it would have given me time to catch my HM users without needing to take additional time now. Going north of Jubilife City, there is another cave called the Ravaged Path. In here I grab the TM for Rock Tomb, which I do end up teaching to Heatran, and I'll take this opportunity to correct a mistake I made in a former video. The file that I was using for my move information was unfortunately taking a lot of information from Generation 6 and beyond. One of those details is the fact that Rock Tomb was not upgraded in Generation 4. It still only has 50 base power and 80% accuracy. Being a physical move, it's just not better than Ancient Power when Heatran uses it. Also, please do observe the fact that Rock Tomb has the incorrect information in my moveset, but the correct information on the right-hand side of the screen in my move pool. I don't want to get into the reason why this is happening. Honestly, it's just bad programming that I did. Don't worry, for the next run, I will have fixed it. The next major battle is against Commander Mars. I figured Heatran wasn't really going to have an issue here. It can't be poisoned by the Zubat's Toxic, plus Ancient Power is super effective. I move on to the Purugly. It uses Fake Out, which doesn't do very much. Then I use Ancient Power, doing about a third. Now the normal type can only use Feint Attack and Scratch from this point on in the battle, and Heatran resists both of those moves. And that's where I want to draw your attention to the right hand side of the screen, because now the opponent's moves will be displaying their effective power against my current Pokemon. So you can see that Feint Attack being resisted with a base power of 60 now has an effective power of 30. Scratch gets the same type attack bonus, taking it up to an effective power of 60, but then this is halved because I'm a Steel type. I was previously showing PP in this portion of the screen, and I just don't think that that's as important. After defeating her ace, Heatran levels up to 17, and I teach Fire Fang in the place of Leer. I reorder my moves, placing the fire move in the first slot just so it's a little bit easier to access. Even though it is physical with the same type attack bonus, I think this should be my go-to move from now on. In Eterna Forest, I do some optional training just because Cheryl will heal me after each battle. I don't think that Heatran is going to need a lot of additional experience, but I do want to get some. After all, I am anticipating that Crasher Wake is going to wall it very hard. By that point in the game, I think that I will still only have one special move in the form of Ancient Power, and Gyarados starts the fight off with Intimidate. That said, I do have a plan for him, but it's not time to talk about it just yet. Instead, I have to head into the Eterna City gym and face Gardenia. She has 3 grass types. The Turtwig does not know any ground type moves, so of course this is going to be an easy win. While I sweep her team, I just will draw your attention to the fact that Grass Knot is not currently displaying its effective power. In the future, I'm going to update my overlay so that this move does display correctly, but in this case, it doesn't really matter. Like, what are her Pokemon going to do? Absolutely nothing. Of course, Heatran earns itself the second badge. After this, there is a bunch of dialogue that I have to go through. I did not pick up the Draco plate just north of the statue. This is a mistake. After all, Heatran does learn Dragon Pulse, and while I did do a type coverage calculation on Heatran before this run, I didn't factor in Dragon moves to it, and it turns out they're actually really helpful for this thing. So as we head through the Team Galactic building, let me explain. I'm going to be using the Pokemon DB type coverage calculator for this, and I should note there are some flaws with this tool. For example, it's going to tell you that ground type moves are super effective against Pokemon with Levitate. So please keep that in mind that these results are not going to be 100% accurate. Using a Fire and a Steel move, Heatran is going to be not very effective against 235 different species. By the way, this includes Pokemon from later generations, so yes, this number is inflated. Very soon I'm going to gain access to Earthquake, and while this is a physical move, this takes the number of not very effective Pokemon down to only 15. If I then add a rock move into the mix, like Rock Slide or Ancient Power for example, then Heatran is normally effective against every Pokemon in the game. What I'm failing to recognize here is that I need to be super effective against specific targets. I'm thinking about Cynthia's Garchomp specifically. And in this case, if I remove either the rock type move or the ground type move in favor for a dragon type move, I still have 0 Pokemon that I'm not very effective against. Also, the combination of Fire Dragon and Steel has neutral damage against every target in the game, although the total number of Pokemon that I have normal effectiveness against has dramatically risen. That said, I'm going to be able to have 4 moves on my set because Heatran doesn't get access to any reliable setup moves. Well, that might not be entirely true. After I defeat Commander Jupiter, I can head to the old chateau, and here, after obtaining my first rare candy, I pick up the TM4 Substitute. This might be potentially useful in some fights, but until I find a place where I really want to use it, I'm just going to keep it in my bag. It's finally time to head south. In this case, I pass through Wayward Cave, grabbing my second rare candy, as well as the TM for Earthquake. Well, I'm gonna get Earthquake after I get by this really annoying bike challenge. This one is so hard on 4x speed, so eventually I did have to drop the game speed to 1x to complete it. That lets me grab the TM for Earthquake, which I teach to Heatran in the place of Rock Tomb. Now I have a move that is going to be very good against Rock-type Pokemon. Before entering Mount Coronet, I pick up my third rare candy, and then I pass through the cave and into Hearthome City. Here, I make sure to pick up the Shell Bell, and then I want to note a new thing that I have figured out that I can do. Since I'm catching Psyduck, I have access to Amity Square, and in here there are some useful items. For example, the Secret Power TM, the Attract TM, the Spooky Plate to boost the power of Ghost type moves, as well as the Amulet Coin to gain more money from fights. This last item has the potential to be very useful in future runs. The TMs I can purchase from the Game Corner all cost a lot of money. For example, Hidden Power takes a total of 6,000 coins, which is 120,000 Pokédollars. Without the Amulet Coin, I'm just not going to be able to buy this TM until much later into the run. But by using it and selling some other items that I collect throughout the run, I think that I can start buying this item earlier on. That would also give Pokemon access to other fantastic moves like Swords Dance, Rest, U-Turn, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, and Psychic. Today I couldn't find the Amulet Coin. I thought it wasn't going to be a hidden item, but it turns out it is, so I leave Amity Square essentially empty-handed. While this is a small time loss, it's not the worst thing in the world because I wasn't planning to use Hidden Power anyways. That said, I think that maybe Hidden Power Electric could have a place just to counter Crasher Wake's Gyarados. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself again. Let's head into the third gym and take on Fantina. Despite what my overlay says, which will be updated in the future, I cannot use Earthquake against the Duskull because it has Levitate. That said, her lead isn't a threat because Pursuit, Shadow Sneak, and Future Sight can't do very much damage. Also, Will-O-Wisp is useless because Heatran is a fire type. It takes a total of 2 turns to knock it out, and then she sends in her Miss Magius. It's faster using Confuse Ray, but Heatran still attacks and uses Ancient Power. No Omni Boost, the Miss Magius uses Shadow Ball, I hit myself in Confusion, twice in a row, taking damage from Shadow Ball on the way. As a result, by the time Fire Fang hits, Heatran is in orange health. Miss Magius recovers some health with the Citrus Berry, I go for Fire Fang again, and it is enough to knock her ace out. Okay, perfect. Haunter is next. Once again, I can't use Earthquake here, so I choose to use Fire Fang. It does way more than half. The Haunter uses Hypnosis, but I prepared for this situation by giving Heatran a Chesto Berry. As a result, it wakes up right away and finishes Fantina's final Pokemon. Now, the Ghost-type specialist wasn't the person I was worried about in this portion of the game, because next I have to face Barry. His Staravia has Intimidate, lowering my attack right away. It is now less than half of my special attack. Luckily, Ancient Power is able to one-hit his lead. That said, I now have to go up against Prinplup, which is a mono water type, so Earthquake is not super effective, and without the boost in damage, I am not able to knock it out over 3 turns, and consequently, Bubble Beam is able to knock Heatran out. I tried one more time to see if I got a bad damage roll, or if maybe Ancient Power could give me an Omni boost, but it doesn't, and I also am not able to finish the Prinplup off, so I should just go and level up to 28. To do this, I only need to fight 2 trainers on the route prior to Hearthome City, and then I face the rival again. Now, I have enough damage to 3-hit his ace, and Heatran survives with red health. It gains back a little bit because of the Shell Bell, moves on to the Ponyta, which Earthquake polishes off, and finally Roserade should be a simple one-hit, but I misclicked on Ancient Power, so it survives and paralyzes me. But don't worry, it doesn't matter, I use Fire Fang, and that's that. We're going to go through the next portion of the game fairly rapidly. I pass through Celestic Town, grabbing the Defog TM on the way, and just north of this area, I pick up my 4th rare candy. After that, I crush the trainers on the following route and pass into Veilstone City. This is my opportunity to use the Game Corner to purchase something. I wanted to grab the Silk Scarf to boost the damage of return. That said, I don't have enough money to buy it right away. So I'm going to go to the gym next to face Maylene. Her first Pokemon is Meditite, and I am used to this Pokemon being exceptionally bad in gym battles because Brawlies is trash in Generation 3. That said, things have changed in Generation 4. This one knows Drain Punch, which is fantastic, doing about a third to Heatran, healing Meditite back to green. That is not nice. Luckily, Heatran is able to do enough with Fire Fang and knock it out. Next is Machoke. I am not able to do half to it with Earthquake, which is my most powerful move. This means it attacks twice, taking me down to orange health before the Lucario comes in. Now, even without my speed lowered, I would be slower than her ace. As a result, it moves first with Drain Punch and Heatran faints. Okay, so my strategy now is going to be to use Ancient Power right away on the Meditite and hopefully get an Omni boost so that I can sweep the rest of her Pokemon. This does not go well. Heatran moves on to the Machoke with -2 speed and red health, so that's another reset. I decided to knock the Meditite out as fast as is possible, move on to the Machoke, and try to boost myself here. Ancient Power comes through for me, but I'm still slower than the Lucario. However, this time I have more health. As a result, I can survive the Drain Punch and then crit with Earthquake, knocking her ace out. This is definitely the most difficult Maylene battle that I've had on this channel, and that gives me hope for these runs. I don't think that she is going to be the Bruno of Generation 4 after all. Because I now have just barely enough money, I buy 500 more coins and then purchase the Silk Scarf. Just north of the Game Corner, I pick up my 5th rare candy. Yes, in this video, I'm going to go through every single one. These items are incredibly important in solo playthroughs, and I think they're even more important in Platinum. After all, you get access to so many. After chatting with Looker in the warehouse, I head south towards Pastoria City. This route is fantastic for training because some of the trainers have extremely large teams. For example, Collector Brady has a team of 6 Pokemon, and all of them are weak to Heatran's current moves. I take my time here fighting the majority of the trainers because I want to level up as much as is possible. After all, Crasher Wake is coming up very soon. But before him, I need to pick up 2 more rare candies. The first one is through Pastoria City onto the next route. It's also hidden in one of these boggy areas. And the next one's going to be in the Great Marsh. I have a few things to say about it, but before we get to that, I decided to face Barry outside of the gym. This battle is extremely similar to the previous one. Staravia is first, triggering Intimidate, and I knock it out with a single use of Ancient Power. Next he sends in Prinplup. By the way, it is level 36, but it hasn't evolved. I think the developers probably did this for balance purposes. For Heatran, it might actually be easier to face it when it's fully evolved so that I would have super effective damage with Earthquake. In this case, I have to rely on Ancient Power, but luckily it does exactly a third, so once again I'm just barely able to survive his ace and finish off his final 2 Pokemon with relative ease. Now it's time to talk about the Great Marsh candy. Last year when playing Platinum, I thought that you had to get stuck in the mud to grab this one, but you don't. If you just approach it from above, you can pick it up without ever getting stuck. Thanks to Kenny for leaving this tip on one of my former videos. This candy is the 7th one that I've picked up, and with it in my inventory, I'm now ready to head into the water-type gym to face Crasher Wake. My plan for this fight is to use rare candies to make him easier. That said, I don't know if I need to level up first before using them to make it a little bit more consistent. It would also be nice to save the rare candies until later, so I decided to try the fight once at level 39 just to see how it would go. In this case, Ancient Power does more than half to the Gyarados, but its Waterfall is doing a lot. I knock it out on the second turn, no Omni Boost, he sends in Quagsire next, and I really don't have good damage against this thing. Return is my best option. That said, Mudshot is just doing way too much damage. Okay, time to use my first 7 rare candies to take Heatran up to level 46. I was hoping that I might get the one hit on Gyarados, but I don't. It's definitely going to survive every time. That said, I now put it in healing range, which means he's going to use a Hyper Potion, giving me 2 more chances to use Ancient Power against it. This means in every fight that I have against Crasher Wake, I am going to get 3 rolls for the Omni Boost. Even though this next battle ends up being a loss, I felt very confident because I now have a path to victory, even though it's an inconsistent one. After resetting for my 11th time overall in the playthrough, I finally get the Omni Boost against the Gyarados, allowing the second Ancient Power to knock it out in a single hit. The following Quagsire goes down to 2 hits from Return, and then even with the Citrus Berry, the Floatzel can't hang on. Normally, that would be it for this gym, but while filming, I experienced a tech problem. After leaving the building, I had to step away from my computer, and during this time, the software running everything froze, and when I came back to resume the playthrough, I realized that it wasn't possible. I am now recording input replays for all of my Platinum playthroughs. What these are is essentially the game records every single input that I make throughout the playthrough, and then it can recreate it exactly because all of the RNG in the game is deterministic. I played back the inputs, but then I noticed that there was a major time discrepancy. Let's compare the moment just after I saved before I fight Crasher Wake with 7 resets. When playing back the replay, I had a time of 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 43 seconds. But when I was playing live, I had a time of 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 54 seconds. Here are the 2 left-hand sides of the screenshots side by side, so you can see that my stats are identical, proving that this is the exact same run. The question then remains, what is responsible for the time discrepancy? And the answer is simple: Platinum has a variable frame rate. The Nintendo DS's processor couldn't keep up with the load required in certain large areas like Veilstone City or Jubilife City. The developers compensated for this by capping the frame rate. By the way, the DS runs at 60 frames per second, but the game is only going to render 30 frames per second. It runs at this speed during battles, but this measure wasn't enough in the overworld, so the game throttles the frame rate when you get to locations like Jubilife City. You can see this on a modern emulator. I'm using BizHawk. If you just fire up Platinum, tell it to run on 4 times speed, and then go between different locations in the overworld, you will see that the frame rate is highly variable. I tried everything that I could to stabilize this. There's a frame rate patch, it didn't work. I tried overclocking my CPU, which didn't work. I tried running the game on a lower game speed, but this also doesn't work. Still at 3 times speed, it throttles the FPS. I would have to go all the way down to 2 times speed, and that would make each one of these runs roughly 6 to 8 hours, and yeah, I'm not going to do that. I also tried using a just-in-time recompiler with a different emulator, but even then, I cannot get a stable frame rate. While my computer can go up to 800 frames per second while emulating Platinum, it can't actually keep it stable at 240. If I impose limitations, then the frame rate ranges somewhere between 180 to 240. There are still a few options that I have available to me to try, but they're going to take some time to explore. One of them is using a computer that has a CPU with better single-threaded performance. If you are currently running an i9-14900K, please let me know. I would love to sit down with you and see if we can set up all of my software and run Platinum on your PC with a stable frame rate. I've left my email at the top of the description. Please contact me there. In order to continue filming this run, I decided to take the time that I originally had when I was playing live. I feel that this is the most fair way to do it because all of the previous Pokemon have not had the benefit of using replay files to lower their finish time. It made the most sense to come back and start with my last save file, which was before Crash or Wake at 7 resets. I updated all the metrics so that they aligned with that, and then I began recording again. Luckily for me, the universe wanted things to line up the same way, so once again I have a total of 11 resets before I get the Omni Boost I need and defeat him for a second time. With Crash or Wake now behind me, I think the game is going to get easier for Heatran. After chasing the Galactic Grunt around, I backtracked to Eterna City to pick up the Draco Plate. I'm glad I realized this while I was playing, so that I don't have to add it as an addendum at the very end, telling you that I wish I had done that during the run. Next I face Cyrus for the first time, and this battle is really easy. His Pokemon are all weak to rock moves. You will notice, of course, that I used Fire Fang against the Sneasel, but overall this fight's just very straightforward. With Cyrus defeated, I now have the HM for Surf. Immediately I head back to the Valley Windworks to pick up a Max Elixir, but this isn't the only good item in this area. If I continue surfing, I can go to the northern part of Floroma Meadow. Here, I can grab a PP up, as well as my 8th rare candy. But the good news doesn't end, because I can also go to the Ironworks to grab the TM for Flamethrower. In these challenges, I really like it when I get to use a wide range of moves, so it's very unfortunate that this Fire-type TM comes right before I learn Lava Plume at level 49. With Flamethrower on my set, now it's time to grab 2 additional rare candies. The 9th rare candy is south of Veilstone City across this little pond, and the 10th is on my way to Canalave City. Here, I have to face the rival again. This is definitely one of his more difficult teams. That said, my moveset has dramatically improved because I now have special damage with the same type attack bonus. I one-shot his first 2 Pokemon, then he sends out Empoleon. Flamethrower does so much to it, even inflicting a burn. The retaliatory Bubble Beam does do a decent amount, almost half, but it's not enough. And with that, I'm able to easily sweep through his final 2 Pokemon. Next is Iron Island, and normally you just grab Strength here and then immediately fly back to Canalave City, but today I'm going to explore the interior of this area just so that I can pick up the Iron Plate, which will boost the damage of Steel-type moves by 20%. Now I've spent very little time mentioning the plates in this video because Heatran has a very unfortunate circumstance when it comes to these awesome type boosting items. The plate that boosts the damage of Rock-type moves, which would have helped with Ancient Power, is only obtainable after you get the Waterfall HM. There is no plate that boosts the power of normal type moves. The ground type plate and the soft sand are roughly equivalent in location, and the flame plate is not obtainable until the post game. I checked to see if maybe I could use the charcoal instead. After all, they have the same effect, but unfortunately it is also only available in the post game. By the way, normally I'm going to obtain these items through finite methods, but sometimes you can catch a Pokemon that is holding them, but that's not the case in this game. So unfortunately for Heatran, this is the first one that it gets that it can boost same type attack bonus moves with. And I still do not have a steel type damage dealing move. But that's about to change when I beat Byron, and he is next. His lead is Magneton, so yeah, Earthquake just gets an easy one hit here. Next is Steelix, and of course Flamethrower secures the KO, so that leaves only his Bastiodon. That said, like Magneton, this Pokemon takes 4 times damage from Earthquake, so Heatran gets the clean sweep, and with that it earns itself the TM for Flash Cannon. As a special attacker, the Steel type is not necessarily what you want to have, because there are very few Steel type moves that deal special damage. Within Generation 4, I could only find a total of 3: Mirror Shot, Flash Cannon, and Doom Desire. That said, Doom Desire is an exclusive to Jirachi, so yeah, there are only 2 special category Steel type moves. And of them, Heatran can only learn 1. It's a bit unfortunate that it has a base power of 80, and its secondary effect is that it has a 10% chance to lower the target's special defense by 1 stage. There definitely is some synergy there, but it's not as nice as another effect like perhaps the chance to flinch or inflict a status condition. As I fight the Team Galactic admins, I want to mention the effective power of this move. With the Iron Plate, Flash Cannon's effective power is 144. With no type boosting item, Flamethrower's effective power, just with the same type attack, attack bonus is 142. Also, Steel-type moves are not very good offensively until the Fairy type gets introduced to the series in Generation 6. I'm only going to be dealing super effective damage to Rock and Ice-type Pokemon, and yes, there is an Ice-type leader coming up next, but I could just manage her with Flamethrower anyway. And speaking of Candace, let's head through Mount Coronet to the icy region of the map. Inside the mountain, I grab my 11th rare candy, the soft sand, and my 12th rare candy. By the way, this is the maximum number that are available to the player in a solo challenge of Pokemon Yellow, so as I start to obtain more and more of these items, things are going to get a little bit ridiculous. Just outside the cave, I can grab a PP up. I am trying to locate all of these items because sometimes they're useful, especially when you're relying on moves like Ancient Power. Luckily, that's not the case for me anymore. In the Blizzarding area, if I walk horizontal to this house, I will find my 13th rare candy, and then arriving in Snowpoint City, I am going to find my 14th rare candy, which is just to the right-hand side of the gym. I'm not going to need the level boosting items now because Candace is going to be a walk in the park. Well, a cold walk in the park, but don't worry, I'm used to that. Sneasel is up first, of course. I go for Flamethrower and easily one-shot. Yes, Flash Cannon is slightly better by 3 effective power, but I don't think it's going to be the thing that makes the difference here. I one-shot the Piloswine. Strangely, I always think that the ground type is resistant to the steel type, but that's not the case. Next is Obama Snow, and of course Flamethrower gets the job done, so I've made it to her ace, Frostlass. It outspeeds by 1 point using Shadow Ball, which does almost nothing, and with that, I've earned myself the 7th badge. As I explore the Team Galactic warehouse, I'm going to draw your attention to a rare candy that I haven't always been picking up in these runs, just because for a while I forgot where it was. So when you're on this floor with this guy and the 2 stairs and the 1 teleport pad, you can fight him and then go up the stairs. On the next level, once you get by 2 trainers, there is a hidden rare candy on the middle tile of this hallway. And because we're keeping count, that is number 15. I did expect to one-hit all of Cyrus's Pokemon, but unfortunately the Crobat survives a Flash Cannon, just barely by the way. If I used Ancient Power against the Sneasel, then maybe I could have boosted my stats and made this fight a little bit quicker, but it doesn't really matter. After that, I defeat Commander Saturn, release the Lake Spirits, and then I'm ready to complete the plot. Well, before I do that, there are more useful items to obtain. The first one is the TM for Rock Slide, which I thought I might end up using, but I don't actually by the end of this run. After that, I pick up my 16th rare candy. In this case, I noticed that while the text box is open, this spinning trainer will not battle you, and I definitely fumbled here by pressing B, closing the text box, and then I have to battle her, but in the future I'm going to be able to use that mechanic to save a little bit of time. On my way up to the summit, I collect the 17th rare candy. Once I arrive, I have to face both of the commanders alongside Barry. When I had my initial conversations with Speedrunner about how to solo run Platinum, he mentioned that Barry's team is actually decent after he loses his Munchlax, so I helped that to happen here by using Earthquake to knock it out a little bit quicker. Then he can send in his Staraptor and actually do some work. With them defeated, it is now time for what to me seems like the hardest battle in Pokemon Platinum. It's the Distortion World face-off against Cyrus. Before the battle, I considered using more rare candies just to ensure that this was going to be successful. However, after considering what is yet to come, remember Bertha exists, I decided against it and attempted the fight at level 58. Houndoom is first, and since Ancient Power is super effective plus has a great secondary effect, I decided to use it even if I'm not knocking his lead out in 1 turn. And things work out really well for me here because he uses a healing item, giving me more time, and I do get the Omni boost before the Gyarados comes in and lowers my attack. But that's okay because I have special moves now, so I use Ancient Power to knock it out over 2 turns, and then he sends in Honchkrow. Flamethrower gets the easy one-shot. Weavile fakes Heatran out, taking me down to low-ish orange health, but I don't think it's going to be enough because all that's left is Crobat. I go for Flash Cannon to maximize my damage by that extra 2 effective power, and it's enough. On its first attempt, Heatran clears Cyrus. This was a very good performance, and it makes me hopeful for what's coming next. I run away from Giratina, and then I head to Sunyshore City to prevent Volkner from running away from his duties. Okay, so I'm level 60. It's really over leveled. Also, I have a ground type move, and he has 4 electric types. They have some coverage. The Raichu's Focus Blast would technically be super effective, but Heatran is faster than all of these Pokemon, even the Jolteon, so I just sweep with Earthquake and earn myself a quick 8th badge. Surfing north, there is one rare candy just before the waterfall over on this little landmass. Then, inside the cave, I will note the first trainer I have to face has a Blissey. I have kept Earthquake on my set just so I have a physical move to answer this thing. With it down in the next area, I pick up rare candy number 19. The previous one was 17, by the way. And after dodging a couple trainers, I pick up the 20th rare candy. That's it for this playthrough, and I currently have a total of 13 in my inventory, but I'm going to hold off on using them for now. At the end of Victory Road, I collect the TM for Dragon Pulse, which I think is going to be pivotal for defeating Cynthia, and with all of those errands out of the way, now I have to face the rival one last time. Just so you know, I did debate using rare candies before this to make it a little bit of an easier fight, but in the end I decided against it. I don't think the Empoleon is actually going to be a problem. That said, its Brine does half to Heatran, and then he sends in Snorlax. Just so you know, this thing knows Earthquake. I use Flamethrower, which is a special move and honestly not that good against Snorlax. It maybe should have gone for Earthquake. It does less than half, but luckily for me it inflicts a burn. As a result of the physical damage being halved, I do not get knocked out by the follow-up Earthquake, and the Snorlax goes down. Ancient Power manages the Rapidash, and Flamethrower knocks out the Roserade. Wow, I really got lucky there, but I'm gonna take it. Let's start facing the Elite Four. Aaron is first, and all of his Pokemon are one-hits with Flamethrower. Yes, even the Drapion. After this battle, I start using my rare candies. At level 73, Heatran has the chance to learn Earth Power, perfect timing. I can now replace Earthquake and have a special ground type move. I continue using rare candies, depleting my reserve, taking Heatran up to level 78. I thought that this was definitely overkill. Let's see how Bertha goes. Whiscash is first, and I don't really have anything that's good against this. Earth Power has the highest effective power, so I'm gonna go for it. It almost gets the knockout. However, then Whiscash uses its own Earth Power, dealing more than half to Heatran. Bertha tries to save it with a healing item, but it doesn't work out, and then she sends in Golem. Now this Pokemon, as well as the following Rhyperior, are both going to be one-hits with Earth Power, just because their special defense is so low. But I'm not sure about the following Gliscor or Hippowdon. The flying type is first, I go for Flash Cannon, and it one-hits. Okay, so I just need to be able to one-hit the Hippowdon, but I wasn't sure if that was going to be possible. I try for Flash Cannon, and because I'm very over-leveled, it does enough. I went into that fight very confident. It ended up being a little bit scarier than I thought it would be, but from here, things should get easier. Flint overall is not really an impressive Elite Four member, and Lucian that follows is similar. Usually the Bronzong survives at least one hit, but in this case with Flamethrower I'm able to one-shot, which feels just so good. I polish off his Espeon, teach Heatran Dragon Pulse in the place of Ancient Power because that move isn't useful anymore. There's only one trainer left, so let's face Cynthia. Up first is Spiritomb, but I don't have a way to set up, so I just need to attack it right away. Flamethrower is the best damage I have, and I one-shot the defensive Ghost Dark type. That's great. Next, she sends in Garchomp, likely because it has Earthquake, which has 600 effective power against Heatran. I don't want to mess around with this thing at all, so I'm holding the Draco Plate to boost the damage of Dragon Pulse to ensure that I get the one hit, and I am able to. Following that, Milotic comes out. I use Dragon Pulse on it for maximum damage. It does half, but the water type used Mirror Coat, so it reflects back so much of the damage. Luckily on the former turn, I did enough so I can finish it off without it hitting me again. Flamethrower one-shots the Lucario, but then Togekiss survives and uses Water Pulse. Alright, fine, I guess I wasn't over-leveled enough. Oh, actually, Heatran survives on 2 hit points and knocks the Togekiss out on the next turn. All that's left is Roserade, and yeah, I I just finished it off with Flamethrower, and with that, Heatran has finished Pokemon Platinum. It clocks in with a real time of 2 hours, 43 minutes, and 55 seconds, with 11 resets at level 80. This is a game time of 7 hours and 43 minutes. In the moment, I was a little bit disappointed with these results. After all, it's a legendary Pokemon, and I expected that maybe it could get under the 2 hour and 30 minute mark. That said, I definitely made mistakes, and it's also really held back in the early game, having to rely on physical damage. Considering all of that, this is still the second best result I have gotten in Pokemon Platinum to date. Heatran is slightly faster than Staraptor, so today it earns the second place overall in my tier list. Since Staraptor's time was 2 hours, 49 minutes, and 21 seconds, I am going to keep it in the A tier alongside this legendary. It's also worth noting that the flying type had to evolve throughout its playthrough, and it did only have 8 resets. Plus, its game time was 10 minutes faster when compared with Heatran. This is the first time that the game time results don't mirror the real-time results in my Platinum series. If I was to rank things based on game time exclusively, Giratina would be first, Staraptor would be second, and Heatran would be third, but only by 1 minute when compared with Cresselia's 7 hours and 44 minutes of game time. That said, if you sat me down now and said pick between Cresselia and Heatran, which one would you rather play? 100% Heatran. Cresselia was an extremely painful playthrough. The fact that it gets access to Psychic so late into the run is very frustrating. That said, I think both of these Pokemon could be improved by using the Amulet coin earlier on to gain a Game Corner TM around Crasher Wake. For Heatran specifically, I think that Hidden Power Electric would really help it out. Access to a special move earlier on would be fantastic, plus the ability to one-shot Crasher Wake's Gyarados would greatly improve my odds in that battle. And I should probably take a moment now to just reflect on Hidden Power in these runs. Up until this point, I've just been setting it to Dark because I thought that the Game Corner TM was far too expensive to be useful. With the realization that I can get the Amulet coin and really try to synergize things around obtaining this TM, I think for future runs I need to more carefully contemplate which type is going to be best for the Pokemon I'm using. That said, I am recording this voiceover after I have already filmed the next video, so don't expect me to do any fancy Hidden Power plays there. Thanks so much to everyone who supports me directly. I love all of you like Heatran loves making new friends. And speaking of friendship mechanics, our next Platinum video is really going to center around them again. It's going to release on March 31st, but until then, there's going to be lots of other content. Next week, we go back to Pokemon Yellow to kick that series off for the year with Electrode versus Magneton. I am really excited for that video, and I hope you are too. By the way, these are the only 2 electric types that I still have yet to do a solo challenge with in Yellow. This fact really reminds me that that series is starting to get closer and closer to its eventual conclusion. Okay, that's it for this one. If you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.